Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We obviously had five-star quarterback from the 2026 class, Julian Lewis, commit to the USC Trojans yesterday morning. Now I want to hop on and talk about what the future of this quarterback room looks like for Lincoln Riley and the USC Trojans as they go into the Big Ten. And before we get into it, two things. One, Lincoln Riley, a lot smarter than I am. I'm going to give you guys some of my takes in terms of how this quarterback room shakes out over the next couple of years. And then secondly, USC fans, can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys like you guys have. It's been a blast talking this team. It's clearly going in the right direction, moving to the Big Ten. The support from the USC fans has been just absolutely tremendous. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, let me know how you guys think the quarterback room shakes out. We're going to be talking about the 3-4 year plan for the USC Trojans at the quarterback spot with two kind of different situations, right? One, Julian Lewis staying in the 2026 class, and then the other with Julian Lewis reclassifying, which you're seeing a lot of smoke and buzz around to that 2025 class. So appreciate you guys rocking with the boys, and let's get into it. And I first want to talk about Julian Lewis reclassifying to the 2025 class because as an outsider looking in, that's what makes the most sense. Now, I want to talk about quarterbacks reclassifying in the first place. Normally, the trend or the track record, I should say, is not that great. Like a lot of the quarterbacks who forego their senior year, enroll in the school year early, like it hasn't worked out well. Quinn Ewers, we'll see how that works out. But you look at Gavin Wimsatt at Rutgers, historically, it's not a great plan for quarterbacks. Julian Lewis, though, I think is a little bit different because of how advanced he is in the process. That was one thing we talked about yesterday when we were breaking down Julian Lewis. He was a full-time starter as a freshman in high school at one of the best programs across the country in Carleton, Georgia. He went 14-1, threw for over 4,000 yards, I believe 40 touchdowns. He's a guy that already is really experienced. So even if he did forego his senior year and he stays healthy, knock on wood, he's had him start 3 straight seasons at a really, really high caliber of high school football. So in terms of the developmental process, Julian Lewis already well beyond his age in terms of experience and skill set. I don't think that would be a bad move for Julian Lewis. And now talking about how this would look for USC's quarterback room going forward, I think it would make more sense for USC to have him reclassify. And I wouldn't be surprised if Lincoln Riley has already talked about this and this conversation has already been had with Julian Lewis, Lincoln Riley, and the USC staff. Because what it looks like is they're going to pass on a 2024 quarterback. And if you have Julian Lewis stay in the 2026 class, recruiting a 2025 quarterback is going to be awfully hard, right? And I'm not saying Lincoln Riley can't do it because if you're a quarterback, you want to go play for Lincoln Riley. That being said, everything we were talking about is, all right, sounds like the Trojans probably going to pass on a quarterback in that 2024 cycle and then go after their top quarterback in the 2025 board. I think that top quarterback in their 2025 board is Julian Lewis. I think he reclassifies. And if you take a look at what it looks like if he does reclassify, right? 2023 season, we know what our quarterback room looks like. Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner. He's going to start for USC. No questions there. Then in 2024, and this is assuming, Caleb Williams has a phenomenal year. USC makes the college football playoffs, probably going to the NFL. And that would make all the sense in the world. He is one of the more impressive quarterbacks that we've seen as a prospect. In the 2025 year or 2024 year, you'll have Malachi Nelson, Miller Moss battling it out for that starting job in 2024. Now, if Malachi Nelson wins the job, would you blame a guy like Miller Moss to transfer out? You really wouldn't, because Malachi Nelson is going to start for 2 years. Miller Moss is just not really going to be able to see the field. And from everything you're hearing, Miller Moss might be the guy as well. Like, he is really looking good in fall camp, would probably start at most programs across the country. So if Miller Moss wins the job, he plays for a year in 2024. Then you have Malachi in 2025, and that's when you have Julian Lewis enroll at USC. And that, to me, is the perfect scenario, right? Where you have Malachi Nelson going into his third year as the starting quarterback in 2025, and then you have Julian Lewis coming in as a freshman to back up Malachi. That's when outside looking in, most quarterbacks develop the best in that situation, right? Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence did it, although he played as a true freshman a little bit. In terms of development, having a entrenched starter as a kind of like the 5-star quarterback comes in, kind of like what Malachi Nelson's doing with Caleb Williams right now, right? Caleb Williams, the starter, Malachi Nelson coming in, going to be learning from one of the best quarterbacks to do it. If I'm a USC fan, that's how I want it to look like. Malachi Nelson, your starter in 2025, Julian Lewis backing him up. And then when Julian Lewis goes into that 2026 year, that's when he's really ready to rock and roll. Because if Julian Lewis does not enroll in 2025, that's the next kind of storyline. And I know this is kind of, I mapped it out on the notebook right now. It gets confusing. I wouldn't say I'd be concerned, because at the end of the day, I trust Lincoln Riley with this quarterback room and how he's going to manage it. But if Julian Lewis doesn't come until the 2026 class, then it gets a little bit hairy, right? You have Caleb in 2023, 2024, same situation. Malachi Nelson, Miller Moss battling it out. If Miller Moss hits the transfer portal, Malachi Nelson would really only be your only scholarship quarterback on the roster in 2025. And if he goes to the draft, then Julian Lewis is coming in 2026 as a true freshman that kind of needs to start. You don't have many quarterbacks that are kind of waiting in the wings. And so it makes a lot of sense for Julian Lewis to reclassify to 2025. Again, he has all this, the toolkit, the skill set, the experience to reclassify. And then your quarterback room, like, you see a very clear runway of having premier quarterback talent for the next 4 to 5 years for USC. If you wait till 2026, then it gets a little bit more hairy. And what I think Lincoln Riley would need to do at some point, because they're not going to take a quarterback in 2024, and they might not even take one in 2025 because you have Julian Lewis, who's in the 2026 class, I think Lincoln Riley would need to go to the transfer portal. Now, at the end of the day, if you're a top quarterback that's in the transfer portal, you're going to want to go play for USC. USC will have their pick of the litter in terms of the top quarterbacks in the transfer portal. But I don't know if that's where Lincoln Riley wants it. I don't know if he wants to rely on having to get a kid in the transfer portal to come in and start with little competition. So at the end of the day, for me, you're hearing a lot of buzz and smoke about Julian Lewis reclassifying to 2025. On the paper, in terms of mapping out the quarterback situation for USC, I think that would make the most sense, just because you have a clear runway of having at least 2 really quality quarterbacks in the room through 2026. If he stays in that 2026 class, you don't have as clear of a runway in terms of quarterbacks in the room that you trust in the depth at the quarterback position. So expecting Julian Lewis to reclassify to that 2025 class, I think that would make the most sense. It sounds like they've already had these conversations. I'm really excited. And at the end of the day, I guess I'll close on this. Lincoln Riley, I trust him with everything to get this quarterback room situated. Whether Julian Lewis is in the 2025 class or 2026 class, Lincoln Riley, at the end of the day, is going to have this quarterback room right. And the quarterback that's going to be starting for USC for the next 5 years, every quarterback that's going to be starting is going to be quality, talented, and ready to rock and roll. So I trust Lincoln Riley. Just wanted to give you guys some of my thoughts in terms of how this quarterback room shakes out. Again, USC fans, can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys. And if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate y'all. I'm going to talk to you guys.